The chamber was a vast, monolithic structure, its obsidian walls humming with energy. Rows of delegates loomed above, their seats arranged in a crescent around the center of the room, where the accused stood, bound in shimmering energy restraints. The woman in the center did not kneel, did not plead, did not even so much as bow her head. She merely watched them with an unreadable expression, her stance too calm for someone on trial before the most powerful council in the galaxy. Chancellor Vori, a being of skeletal silver plating and luminous eyes, raised a clawed hand to silence the murmurs in the chamber. Commander Evelyn Carter of the Terran Dominion. His voice echoed, smooth and practiced. You stand accused of high crimes against the Galactic Order, unauthorized military advancements, aggressive expansionism, and defiance of interstellar law. How do you plead? Evelyn tilted her head slightly. And what crime is it, exactly, to fight for survival? A ripple of discontent surged through the gathered council members. A Zarathian warlord, his scaled body draped in ceremonial armor, let out a guttural snarl. Survival? Your kind has done more than survive. Human. You disrupt the natural order with your reckless ambition. The synth representative, a being of pure data encased in a floating metal shell, spoke with a voice like grinding machinery. Terran technology has accelerated at a rate deemed unnatural, unauthorized, impossible. It must be contained. Evelyn exhaled slowly, her gaze flicking between the speakers. Contained. That was always the justification, wasn't it? The Council saw Earth as a wild card, a species that had broken past its limitations too quickly, a threat to the delicate balance they had cultivated for millennia. Humanity had clawed its way into the stars, uninvited, unshackled by the restraints of those who had come before. That, she knew, was the real crime in their eyes. A Murok diplomat, her amphibious skin glistening in the artificial light, folded her webbed fingers together. This is not a trial for debate, she intoned, measured and cool. The evidence is irrefutable. Your forces engaged in unauthorized conflict against the Zarathian Empire. You defied direct orders to stand down. You interfered in matters beyond your understanding. Evelyn let the silence stretch between them before speaking. If you had succeeded, Colony Alpha 9 would have been glassed. Every man, woman, and child eradicated. Her voice, quiet but sharp, carried through the chamber. You call it interference. I call it justice. The Zarathian warlord's claws dug into the armrest of his throne. Justice. His voice was a low growl, barely restrained. You dare speak of justice? You. Enough. Chancellor Vori's voice cut through the tension like a blade. He turned his luminous gaze to Evelyn, his expression unreadable. Your fate has already been decided, human. You will spend the remainder of your existence in containment. Your knowledge, your advancements, your very presence among the stars, restricted. That is the will of this council. A hush fell over the chamber, the finality of the sentence settling like a weight upon the air. Evelyn inhaled, then let out a slow breath. No surprise, no anger, only that same quiet composure. You should not have brought me here, she said. The Chancellor narrowed his eyes. And why is that? She smiled then, just slightly. Because now, you've made this personal. The words lingered, but before the council could respond, the energy restraints around her wrists flared brighter, and in the next moment, she vanished. Panic rippled through the chamber. The security field had not failed, the containment measures had not flickered, and yet, the prisoner was gone. A flash of movement in the air, barely perceptible, and then the alarm screamed to life. The high-security doors slid open just as Evelyn Carter reappeared at the chamber's edge, hands now free. Guards surged forward, weapons raised. Too late. She moved faster than should have been possible, weaving through them with a fluidity that defied natural motion. A soldier lunged. She sidestepped, catching his arm and twisting it back in one seamless motion. Another fired an energy bolt, only for it to swerve unnaturally mid-air, missing her by inches. She reached the central console, her fingers moving across the alien interface with precision. Lights flickered. The chamber trembled. Systems began shutting down in rapid succession. The Zarathian warlord roared, leaping from his throne. "What is she?" The synth flickered erratically, its data stream failing to stabilize. This should not be possible. Evelyn turned back to the council, her expression unreadable once more. "You thought humanity was done evolving?" Her voice was quiet, but it carried through the chamber, undeniable, inescapable. "You have no idea what we are." The alarm screamed louder. The chamber's gravity fluctuated, and as the security doors slammed shut behind her, the council realized, far too late, that the woman they had captured was something far beyond what they had feared. The transport vessel Varzun drifted through the void, its hull humming with suppressed energy as it cut through the fabric of space. Inside, tension ran like a live current through the crew. A handful of armed Rathian guards stood at their posts, their reptilian forms rigid with unease. Others manned control stations, their scaled fingers flicking across holographic displays, constantly monitoring the ship's security grid. None spoke. In the containment chamber, Evelyn Carter sat perfectly still. The air around her was sterile, pressurized, held in careful balance by the ship's artificial ecosystem. Her wrists bore the imprint of energy restraints long since removed. There was no need for them anymore. Her captors had not dared to leave her unbound. The ship had done that for them. Every time they tried to reinforce her restraints, the systems would fail, locks unsealing, power flickering, data corrupting in ways their technology could not explain. She had done nothing, or at least that was how it looked. The head of security, a Zarathian officer named Surik, stood outside the containment field, watching her through narrowed amber eyes. His claws twitched against the grip of his plasma rifle. It was wrong. Everything about her was wrong. Even as she sat unmoving, her presence rippled through the air like the aftershock of an unseen force. The ship felt different with her on board, as though it had become an extension of her will. He had never feared a human before. He feared this one. Across the vessel, Dr. Vec Zero, the synth intelligence responsible for maintaining the ship's operations, worked with cold precision. Suspended within a column of streaming data, his digital consciousness pulsed through the ship's systems, analyzing every anomaly, every unexplained malfunction. His calculations yielded the same answer every time, a result so improbable it defied all known logic. Evelyn Carter was evolving. Her neural patterns were unlike any recorded human baseline. Activity surged beyond conventional parameters, breaching into frequencies that no known species could achieve. Something had happened to her, something that even the Galactic Council had not foreseen. Vec Zero interfaced directly with the ship's AI core, cross-referencing human neurological data with all available records, running probability matrix on unexplained phenomena. The core responded in the monotone voice of programmed certainty. No known correlation. Processing error margin, 0.00003%. An error margin that small should have been insignificant. It was not. A sudden tremor passed through the Varzun, subtle but unmistakable. Instruments flickered, power surged, and for the briefest moment, the gravitational field destabilized. On the bridge, a Murok pilot let out a panicked croak, his webbed hands gripping the control panel as readings spiked across his screen. "Something is interfering with the ship's core systems," he rasped. "No external threats detected. It's coming from inside." Surik's jaw tightened. His gaze flicked back to the woman behind the containment field. She remained motionless, her expression unreadable. But then, so small it might have gone unnoticed, she smiled. His pulse quickened. "Reinforce the containment field," he barked to the technicians. Immediately, they scrambled to comply, fingers racing across holographic controls. Energy barriers flared, thickening the already impenetrable walls surrounding their prisoner. But it didn't matter. The lights dipped, then returned. A high-pitched whine filled the air as the containment field overloaded. Then, *** collapsed. ***. Evelyn rose from her seat. No one moved. No one could move. The very air around her seemed to thrum, charged with an unseen force. It was more than just an absence of fear. There was something fundamental at work, something that made every being in the room instinctively aware that they were standing in the presence of something beyond them. She took a single step forward. Surik reacted on instinct, leveling his plasma rifle at her chest. "Stay where you are." Evelyn tilted her head slightly, considering him. "You don't want to do that." Her voice was calm, unthreatening, but there was something in it, some intangible weight that pressed against his mind like a whispered command. Surik's fingers trembled. He tried to pull the trigger. He could not. His body refused to obey. His muscles locked in place, his breath shuddering in his throat. His mind screamed at him to fire, to attack, to do something, but it was as if an invisible force had wrapped itself around his very thoughts, stilling them before they could translate into action. Evelyn sighed. You were never in control. The gravity shifted. A wave of force rippled outward from her, slamming into the walls of the chamber. Monitors shattered. Sparks rained from overhead conduits. The deck plates buckled as an unseen pressure distorted the very fabric of the ship's reality. On the bridge, Vec Zero's systems registered an impossible spatial anomaly. The ship's internal structure was folding in on itself, reacting to an unknown gravitational force localized around one singularity, Evelyn Carter. The alarms wailed, a discordant cacophony of failing systems. Crew members collapsed as their nervous systems overloaded, their minds unable to process the sheer wrongness of the space around them. Evelyn extended her hand. Surik felt the pressure release. He staggered back, breath heaving, his claws shaking. She turned her gaze to the walls around her. The bulkheads bent, groaning under the force of her will. Then, with an eerie stillness, the entire structure settled, as though she had simply decided that it would. The ship obeyed her. A transmission flickered through the failing comm system, a desperate distress call to the Galactic Council. A static-laced voice barely made it through before cutting out. She is not human as we understood. She is something else. Evelyn exhaled, rolling her shoulders as if she had been carrying some unseen weight. She looked at Surik one last time before stepping past him, through the ruined security doors, and into the depths of the ship. The corridors would open for her now. The vessel would not stop her. Nothing would. The Varzan drifted in the void, silent and broken. Systems flickered, failing to stabilize in the wake of what had transpired. The corridors lay in disarray, littered with fallen crew, their bodies caught between consciousness and something deeper, something that lingered, pressing against the edges of their minds like the remnants of a dream they could not wake from. Evelyn Carter moved through the wreckage with measured steps. The ship no longer resisted her. It had surrendered, as all things would. She felt its artificial intelligence struggling, attempting to repair itself, to reassert control. It was pointless. The moment they had brought her on board, the moment they had tried to contain her, their fates had been sealed. A distant voice crackled through what remained of the ship's communications. "Commander Carter, we are detecting..." Static swallowed the rest of the transmission before it resolved. "Your signature. Are you in control?" Evelyn exhaled softly. "I always was." The voice on the other end hesitated, uncertain. "Understood. The fleet is in position. We await your signal." She smiled faintly. "Stand by." Behind her, the ship groaned, a mechanical thing, but something deeper, too. It was aware of what was coming, the inevitability of it. A dying thing, waiting for permission to collapse. Surik had managed to rise, though barely. He braced himself against a wall, his reptilian body trembling, his mind still raw from the pressure she had placed upon it. He did not speak, not yet. He only watched as she turned toward the central console, her fingertips brushing against the interface. The Galactic Council was listening. She knew they were. The moment their distress beacon had activated, they would have been monitoring, watching, trying to understand. They would have seen the impossible readings, the gravitational distortions, the ship's failing structure, and they would be afraid. She activated the transmission manually, letting the signal reach them, The council chamber, wherever it was in the vast expanse of their domain, would hear her now. They would listen. "You should not have taken me," she said. Her voice was not raised, not filled with anger or malice, but it carried. Across light years, through the infinite dark, it carried. A moment of silence. Then, the Chancellor's voice, strained but controlled. "What are you?" Evelyn tilted her head slightly. "The question you should be asking is, what have we unleashed?" Another silence. She could feel them calculating, scrambling for an answer that would make sense within the fragile limits of their understanding. The Zarathian warlord's voice cut through next, sharp and filled with the vestiges of a fear he would not admit. This is not possible. No human. You were wrong about us," she interrupted. "About all of it. There had been a time when humanity was the lesser species. When the Council dictated their growth, determined what they could and could not have, which technologies they were allowed to discover. They had watched from their distant thrones, believing that with enough control, they could contain them. They had never understood what humanity truly was. "I'm not the first," she continued, "and I will not be the last." A wave of realization rippled through the transmission. She could hear it in their silence, the weight of it settling upon them. It had begun. The warlord's voice rose again, desperate now. "What do you want?" Evelyn smiled, though there was no humor in it. "It isn't about what I want. It's about what comes next." The ship trembled beneath her fingertips, the final remnants of its systems flickering, awaiting her will. "You will release Earth from your laws," she said simply. "You will remove every restriction. You will cease your interference in our development." A pause. Then, quieter, sharper, "or we will remove you." The Chancellor's voice was measured, but beneath it, there was something else, a tremor. "You cannot." "I can." The lights dimmed. A pulse rippled outward, and for a brief moment, the Varzoon ceased to exist as a ship. It was nothing, a fragment caught between space and something beyond, something vast and unknowable. And then, as easily as it had unraveled, reality reasserted itself. The ship returned, but changed, its structure subtly wrong, its form no longer entirely bound by the laws that had once governed it. She had rewritten it. The transmission remained open, though no one spoke. Evelyn exhaled softly. "Pray that we remain merciful." And with that, she severed the connection. Far beyond the wreckage, past the dying embers of what the Council had once believed to be absolute, humanity was waiting, and they were ready.